Mitch Lafon here, and on this episode is Tora Tora's Keith Douglas. We talk about the band's rise, their fall, and everything else. Before checking out Keith, please check me out on Twitter at Mitch Lafon, MITCHLAFON. And with that, here is the one, the only, from Tora Tora, Keith Douglas. We are speaking with Keith Douglas, guitarist for the band Tora Tora. I bought the album Surprise Attack back in the day, Keith. A pleasure to speak with you and talk to you about the old times, the new times, and the future.
Hey, great to speak to you too. Thanks so much. I appreciate you calling.
Yeah, so let's just get right into 2017, and then we'll sort of work our way backwards. You just did the Monsters of Rock cruise with the band. Talk to me about that and the cruises in general. I've actually never been on one, so try to relate sort of what that experience is like, from the fan perspective, but also, of course, from the band perspective.
Well, if you've never been, first of all, I would highly recommend it. We had a great time, and the folks that put that on, Monsters of Rock, they do such a great job. I mean, with the booking, and it was smooth. It was amazing. I was blown away how great of a job they did at, having that many bands and, doing the scheduling to where you could kind of bounce around and, hopefully try to catch all of your favorites. We played twice. Most bands played twice. They had 3 different venues. There was like a outdoor stage, and then there's a big theater on the ship. And then there's also a club, like in the back of the ship, tucked back, and it's very intimate, and, it's like the old days, So we played 2 different times over the course of 5 days, 6 nights, and we had a great time. We saw a lot of great bands. I'm a huge fan of a ton of those bands, and, just to be able to get on and, everybody just had a great time. I really, to be honest, I didn't really know what to expect, but I was pleasantly surprised. I had a great time, and if any Monsters of Rock people are listening, please ask us again because we'd love to go.
Yeah, book us again and again. In terms of other shows, though, it seems to be pretty quiet. What do you have planned for the rest of 2017?
Well, actually, in the last year or so, we've been last summer, our bass player, Patrick Francis, was diagnosed with bladder cancer.
Right.
And that kind of slowed us down for the year. We'll usually try to do, just 2 or 3 things during the year, just for fun, and just to keep, we just enjoy playing together. We enjoy getting together, and especially here in Memphis, where we can basically hook up with the same bunch of folks we were partying with, 25 or 30 years ago. And it's a great time to get back together. He has a good diagnosis. I think he's all good now. He had a couple of surgeries. And back in August here in Memphis, we did a benefit show here in Midtown Memphis, a place called Minglewood Hall, and had a lot of local bands, as well as local/national bands from the day, Every Mother's Nightmare, who are buddies of ours, and Todd Poole and the guys from Roxy Blue. A lot of other people showed up, and it was a great day. And we did actually record a live DVD of that show. That's, it's on sale now as a fundraiser basically for Patrick because he missed a ton of work. And but I think we're all good to go now. We've got a lot of offers that have come in. I've actually got a list of people to call. To look into doing some more dates and try to get into some markets we haven't been in a really long time. I don't think we're looking to go on the road because, we're basically too old for that, the way we were doing it back in the day anyway. But we would love to get out and do, a handful of dates at different markets, maybe hit some cities we haven't been to in a long time. So,
well, maybe get you up to Canada. That's my goal, is to get you up here to Canada. Now,
we'd love to.
Yeah, and I'll once we're done, I'll give you a couple of names to contact. We'll try to make it happen. So,
sure, just anywhere that there might be fans. We had, even back in the day, we crisscrossed the country so many times. And, there were certain parts of the country we did a lot better than others, and we'd love to get back to those markets and just kind of blow it out, another time or two with those guys.
So let me go through this timeline, because you did mention the Patrick Francis benefit show.
Right.
And it is over at consciousrecordings.com if people want to go pick up the Blu-ray and
Correct.
the DVD, which is important.
It's really cool, and it's very well done. It's really cool.
Yeah, and I've had a chance to check it out, so I certainly recommend that. So let's talk about, let's sort of start with that timeline. 2008 comes in, and you do Rocklahoma, which is, from what I can gather, is the first show in whatever 20 years or 15 years, or a long time. And then we'll get over to the sort of reunion show for Patrick. But how did that come together? Did Rocklahoma just sort of know one of you guys and said, "Hey, Keith, can you get the guys to do this?" How did that come together? And also, why did you choose to do it? Yeah.
I had seen those festivals come around. I'd come across it on the internet or something. I couldn't believe all those bands from back in the day were still playing to begin with, or most of them. But then to be doing a festival like that, I was just like, man, that is so cool. And I don't know, we went through a period, Patrick and Anthony played together for a while. We kind of ended our thing around 95. Patrick and Anthony kept on playing, and they did a lot of stuff. And I probably went a few years without even being in contact with those guys. But I had come across them at a wedding or something, and we were just hanging out and talking, and I told them, dude, have you seen these festivals, If one of those ever pop up, I'll come play, because I was basically retired, and lo and behold, within 6 or 8 months, Patrick or somebody saying, "Hey, we can get on." Somebody contacted me, or it might have been somebody through Every Mother's Nightmare camp, but somebody got a hold of him. So, at that point, I had to honor my promise, and we just took back up, and to crank back up and play again. As soon as we do, and the four of us are together, it's there's a real thing to it. You hear, it sounds cliche when bands say, there's a magical thing happens, but it's real.
There's a chemistry, right? They always talk about the chemistry.
Yeah, absolutely. And because you play with other guys, it just doesn't sound the same. It really doesn't. So we hooked back up, and we had a ball, for one thing, just rehearsing. Because that's, to me, ultimately always been, the biggest enjoyment for me is just to get in a little room and crank up and just, blow out. That to me is pretty enjoyable.
Yeah.
So we had a great time, and kind of jumped right into that. And, I don't know, we were as prepared as we could be. But
well, at
that point, it was a good reintroduction for us,
for the band,
to at least start fielding, other offers.
I do want to pick up on one thing. You said that you were essentially retired at that point. So just sort of walk me through that emotion. You're 19, you're 18, 19, 20. You work hard as can be. You get signed by a major record company. The album does top 50 on Billboard. Everything is shooting. Was it difficult for you in 1995 to just say, okay, I got to walk away. I got to go,
Well,
just talk to me about, you have these aspirations and these hopes, and then, I got to walk away.
It was. I think, honestly, none of us ever wanted, to be rich and famous. We ultimately accomplished, kind of what we wanted to do, I think. And not that it was okay to quit, but, I don't know if you remember at the time, but, once Nirvana and those bands hit, it was pretty much lights out for our genre of music as a whole, And I think we were unfortunately lumped in with a lot of the, air quote, hair metal bands.
Yeah, which is
Um,
strange because if you listen to the first album, it
yeah,
I don't want to say it's blues rock or southern rock, but it's certainly not glam metal, not in the traditional sense at least. There was certainly a
right,
lot more going on. So yeah, it was an unfortunate sort of, oh, here's the next batch of these, hair guys. It's like,
right.
well, no, it's not a next. Um,
Well, though, at the time, though, there were so many bands that got signed all at once. And, once that, Poison took hold and some of those bands, and they just kind of opened it up. And it's like, everything else. I mean, the record industry was like monkey see, monkey do. And if there was anything they could slap leather pants on and call a hair band, they did. So unfortunately, we kind of got grouped into that. And, it was night and day. And I've heard other interviews. I've heard it, and it's like one day you were there and had a record deal and you were doing your thing, and the next thing you weren't, and it wasn't a big send off from your record company, or, it was just over and they're done.
yeah,
And they move on to the next thing.
yeah, I know how that
Um,
record company stuff works. You phone the office
yeah,
every day, be in touch, your single, we're tour, and then they don't take your calls anymore. They just go,
I know.
no,
And, when you're done, you're done.
you're done.
So,
Oh, and it's cold. It's
um,
very cold. Right?
yeah, it is.
There's no
And,
gold watch.
right. No, not even close. Uh,
Okay, so
But at the time, we had just spent so much time. We had traveled so much. I mean, we were loving it, but we were worn out, you know. And just with that uncertainty, and at the same time, I had a child come along. So, you throw that in the mix with uncertainty, and and you have kids. I mean, you have a sense of responsibility, that you've never had before. So I think that weighed in on, my decision to kind of tell the guys, look, y'all, this isn't really going anywhere, and I don't want to play in these same clubs, for the next 20 years. I just, I've just really got to do something else.
Yeah,
So
and
that's kind of how that worked out.
and that's a very wise decision because you can't be 3,000 miles from home playing to 50 people in a club when you've got a kid at
I
home.
know.
It's
Exactly.
I don't want to say it's not moral, but it's just not right. I mean, you have to have that higher sense of, okay, I've got something to take care of. But let's go back to the very beginning here. So,
Yeah.
To rock and roll comes out as an EP. You get some airplay locally. Everything's going nicely. You sort of the band of the day in the local market. And then somewhere,
Yeah.
somehow, A&M Records goes, oh, who are these guys? Talk to me about that when they come to you and they say, we've got a record deal for you, or we're interested in you. Just there must be a great sense of like, oh my God, this is getting real now. We've
Yeah,
made
it was. We were never on the Memphis scene. We never did a lot of the club gigs because, firstly, when we started, Anthony's a little younger than we were, and when we started, he wasn't even old enough to get in the club. So, and that was at the time they had just started enforcing, the 21 drinking age, and we were just kind of put out by the whole thing. Not to mention, to play the clubs, we really had to play cover tunes, and we were really bad at that. Terrible, as a matter of fact. So we went a different route, and we just kind of decided, let's just do our own thing. I had talked my dad into renting this warehouse space, and, I halfway talked him into it, saying, you could use this as a storage for your building, your business, whatever. Anyway, we ended up with this warehouse that we, before he knew what was going on, we had built a stage on one end and, put in the best light system you could get at Radio Shack, and we just started doing our own thing and just inviting people, and we basically just created our own club, We would have 400 or 500 people out any given time and just, do our thing, charge a few bucks at the door and make enough money to buy a ton of beer and, have a cookout. And we were just having a good time. And with that money, we financed the Tora Tora EP, which we recorded 2 or 3 different places. And we got a ton of support. There was a DJ named Malcolm Riker, and he did like a local show, and he just pushed a ton of bands. He did, he made a Memphis music scene back in that day. But at that point, we had hooked up with Ardent Recordings here in Memphis, a studio, where Jody Stevens from Big Star was heavily involved with the studio. And we somehow got in the door there by winning a contest or something. And they started shopping our material to labels. And the next thing we knew, we had record companies flying in. And, A&M, who ultimately signed us, Brian Huttenhauer, I'll never forget, he said, he flew in and got in his rent-a-car and turned on the radio, and we were on. And, which was, due to our friend Malcolm. And, he drove over to our warehouse that night, and there's, 500 kids hanging out the door, blowing out. And he was like, man, I don't know what's going on here, but, I'll take it. So
right.
That's kind of where it came. And then the next thing we knew, once they had interest, all these other labels, of course, they want to try to outbid each other. So it just kind of popped up that way. And, and here we were just in the middle of it, eating it up. I mean, we were just having a good time, we were just excited for, real record people to come in town and take us to dinner, and buy us drinks.
Free steak will get you far in life. So surprise.
Man, absolutely.
Yeah, it does. Surprise Attack comes out. Now you record a whole bunch of songs that you sort through. Some of those demos come out later as an album called Bombs Away. Talk to me about that, because here you have about 20 or 30 songs. How did you sort of pare it down? And then talk to me about, of course, Walking Shoes, because that song today in 2017 still sounds like a fresh single to me.
Oh, well, cool. Through that first record, we were just kind of, we just let them lead us around. It was Paul Ebersol and Joe Hardy who produced a lot of, he's done all the ZZ Top records, and he was our main producer. And we just kind of, just did basically what we were told. I mean, we showed up with the songs, but we didn't have much artistic input, and I think if you listen to that record, it kind of varies. I mean, from song to song, it sounds completely different than our second record, which by that time, I think we kind of knew who we were.
Are you disappointed with Surprise Attack?
What we wanted to sound like.
Right.
What's that?
Are you disappointed with Surprise Attack? Because I know that on the Bombs Away press release it says, here are some songs that should have been on the first one, and now you're telling me that you were sort of guided by A&M. Did they make the right choices? I mean, are the right songs on that album?
I'm okay with it. It's not like I would sit around and listen to that album. And I like the songs on it. I don't know. Just some of the sounds. It's just a weird process. We were new to the whole recording a record process anyway. But Walking Shoes was one that I had just come across that riff one afternoon, and later that day, Anthony. It was a song we wrote in about 4 minutes. And I've always heard people say, the best ones come quick and they're easy, and that was one of the easiest songs we ever wrote. I mean, it just kind of happened, and we said, well, that's cool. And I don't know. And then it kind of grew to identify us, is the style and that we wanted to go. And I think and even the video for that song, it was a really cool vibe, and we were real excited when that came out, and that kind of got us going in the door. I think that album, like you said, I think it got into the top 50.
Yep. It did.
And something that happened to that one at some point, right in the middle of that, A&M went through some distribution restructuring. So, when our video was all over MTV and we were all over the place, we were traveling on the road and we would see people that say, we can't find your record. It got pulled from stores for probably the most important period. That record may have sold, who knows how many copies, had there been any to buy. So that was another, kind of stumble along the way.
Yeah, it seems to happen, people always think that it comes down to talent and this, but a lot of it comes down to circumstance, because there are a lot of albums that, especially going back in time, that people want to buy and they're not there. So let's get over to Wild America. Again, you do a whole bunch of demos, and again, they've been released now on the Misbehaving compilation, but talk to me about putting that one together. So the band has a little more sense of what you want to do and you want. Okay. Do you start battling A&M at that point, or is it just more free flow of ideas? Is it a fight, or is it just they're listening to us now?
Well, both.
Okay.
And we had traveled so much for Surprise Attack that we had just become that much tighter and that much better of a band. And once we got back to Memphis, and we took a lot of time, but man, we churned out, I can't tell you how many songs, a whole lot. And it just seemed like the record company just got pickier and pickier to where it was almost comical, how many songs we could send them. And we were just like these mass producers and of music, and they just would just knock them down as quick as we could send them in. So, it took a really long time for them and us to be in agreement, which songs were going to make that record. And even the recording process, we started that with John Hampton producing, a producer here out of Memphis that did John Kilzer. He's done a lot of really great things. And, then A&M wanted to take a different direction and bring in a different producer, which was Arthur Payson, and he had done some pretty good work. And, by the end of that process, we had grown so much. And I think, to me, that is a record that can stand up to any record today. I mean, just to me, when I listen to it, if I listen to it now or catch a song, it's just sonically, it sounds great. And that's the way we wanted our records to sound,
Yeah, and of course,
but,
that one actually reached number 134 on Billboard. I've taken the chance to check. So the band does some more touring, and then you get back in the studio and you record Revolution Day, the infamous, unreleased until much later third album.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the one. And I don't know if I want to say depression sets in, but I mean, you work hard, you get this album done, it's ready to go, and then A&M restructures, and it just disappears. It never exists.
Right.
Talk to me about those recording sessions, the songs that the heart and soul that goes into it. And then do you get a call, or do they just not put it on the schedule? How does that just sort of not become available? And that's got to be incredibly frustrating.
It was. And, it was after all the years, literally, that went into Wild America, and after that touring and all that was done, and we were dropped back off here in Memphis to write again, and we were just getting worn out, and like I said, that you could kind of feel the musical tides were changing. kind of feel a different relationship with the record label. I think they changed our A&R guy. Just everything got kind of weird. And we were here, and even writing that record, we did a lot more outside writing, which was fine. And Anthony and I would travel. We wrote a lot of stuff with Stan Lynch, who was at the time, or forever, the drummer for Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And we worked really well with him and wrote some cool tunes, as well as Taylor Rhodes in Nashville, who's done a ton of work with Kicks. I think he just produced their last record also. But, you know, just it was a different vibe. And we had the producer, Tom Werman, who...
Yeah, I know Tom.
If you Google, man, that guy's got a list of albums that'll blow your mind.
Right. I mean, mostly what he's known for, of course, is Cheap Trick and Motley Crue.
Right.
And
right.
I've actually stayed at Tom's house.
Have you?
Yeah, out in Massachusetts. It's quite spectacular, because when you walk in, the opening hall is just walls of gold and platinum records, and you know, it's almost like being in a museum. You just look and you go, one guy has all of this? Holy, you know?
I know.
It's
an incredible list.
Oh, it's absolutely stunning. And you know, he's one heck of a nice guy. And he runs a bed and breakfast now. So if people want to go experience that and see these gold and platinum records, head on up there. But so what was it like working with Tom? Because, you know, he's a great producer, but he's also one of sort of the label guys, right? He comes in and he's there to give a sound to a band, and usually it's the sound that the label wants the band to have. So what was that like?
You know, I was really excited about working with him, you know, for obvious reasons. And it was just another part. I don't know. I don't want to say anything bad about Tom, but it seemed like he was just kind of going through the motions, just like you said, taking direction from whatever the record company was telling him. And, you know, by that point, with the change of the people at the label, we were just kind of out of the loop then, you know. So I don't know, that record wasn't the greatest experience. There's some good songs on there. I don't think it sounds all that great. But you know, it's what it was. And then to get it finished and mixed, and we're all okay with it. And, you know, and then maybe we got a call from our management, who at that time was Bill Graham management. And I think they basically just said, you know, it's, you know, not a question of the release date, you know, but we just they're not going to release it. And that was just kind of like the end of that, you know.
Yeah, it's got to really take the wind out of sails. I mean,
it does. And, you know, if that just, like I said, at the time with that going on, as well as other factors, it just kind of felt like, you know, why are we even doing this? You know, it just seems kind of pointless. But that's kind of where that was at, you know. And I think that record, it has kind of like a different kind of tone to me. I mean, if I hear songs from it, I don't know, it's a little darker to me.
Well, yeah, and of course, you know, by 94, 95, with Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, there was a different sound going on, and you know, record companies always want to chase that radio single. So I'm sure that sort of gets into your record, even if you don't want it to. You're aware of what's going on, and it sort of now the album sits unreleased until 2011. What was that like for you, knowing that you had this album that nobody's going to hear? And then what was it like when it finally got out? Even though it wasn't this wide distribution, you go, you know what? At least it's there, and I can say, it's out.
Yeah, well, you know, somewhere in the middle of all this, Anthony came across Steve Lockett, who does F&A Records. It's just a little thing he does himself. And, you know, he was approached Anthony, well, if you guys have any unused stuff, I mean, let's just why don't you just put it out? You know, why not? And we didn't have a good reason why not. So, you know, I personally, I mean, I collected old tapes. I mean, we had stuff off cassette tapes. I mean, I don't know if you've listened to any of those, but some of them are pretty rough. You know, less than stellar quality, I guess, but you know, they are what they are. They're demos. But you know, and after we got all that together, at some point, we were like, well, why don't we just release that? I mean, why not? You know, and there was a question of the legality of it, and you know, who actually owned it, and you know, I think we finally decided, you know, they probably don't even, whoever owns it probably doesn't even know. I mean, so we just figured, what's the harm, and just kind of threw it out there. So,
Yeah.
you know, I'm glad it's available to anybody that may want to hear it. There is a place to get it. So at least there's that, you know.
Yeah, in fact, I was going to ask you about the legalities, but you just answered it. So there was no negotiation. Yeah. It wasn't, you weren't released from your obligations, et cetera, et cetera. So somebody who's at A&M who might hear this might go, hey, wait a minute.
Honestly, I had a hard time figuring out who even owns it. I don't even think, you know, A&M even got sold as a label to a Universal Music. I don't even know. You know, like I said, whoever owns it probably doesn't even know it. So, you know, I'd seen at a time that Wild America was actually re-released on some British label, you know, and I was like, okay, I never heard anything about that, but so why not? Why shouldn't we be able to do Revolution Day ourselves?
Yeah.
I mean,
own your own stuff.
I don't know. I haven't gotten any cease and desist letters, so I guess it's okay.
well, you might in a couple of weeks. And of course, there was Dancing with a Gypsy, which was on the Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure soundtrack.
Right.
Right. Talk to me about that too, because getting on a soundtrack is obviously important, and anytime that movie plays or there's got to be some kind of, you know, a couple of pennies get put in the bank account. So what was that like to be on such a major motion picture release, and what did it mean for the band's profile and just for you?
Well, I think at that time, that may have been when we were very first signed to A&M. It was before Surprise Attack. And it seems like our A&R guy just kind of worked us in, and Dancing with a Gypsy was actually a demo we had done here at Ardent Studios, and that was just kind of the one they went with, and we were like, cool, you know, and it was just, to us, I mean, that was just something that was super exciting, you know. I mean, when that movie came out, we all went, you know, just to see our name at the end of the movie, you know, go up in the trailers, you know, the credits or whatever. So that was super exciting, and you know, because there was Extreme was on that. It was a lot of A&M did the soundtrack, so there was a lot of ties. So we felt really lucky to get in that, and it is still cool. It's a cool piece of trivia, you know. That was a pretty famous movie, so you know, I think it's pretty cool.
That's
to have some tie to that.
It's a great sort of movie to be on, and of course there was also Glenn Burtnick, who of course was Styx, was on there with the song, and just a lot of great stuff going on that song. So let's fast forward to now then. So 2008 there was Rocklahoma. There's another club show in 2009, and then of course we get to the reunion to help Patrick Francis. When Patrick comes to you, or when you hear the news about the cancer, obviously that's got to hit you emotionally. It's got to be deep. Was it just nice to be able to have a band and just say, "Hey, we can do something"?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. A good friend of ours here in town, Matt Montgomery, pretty much took that on himself. I mean, it was amazing, the work the guy put into it. I mean, it was within, you know, the next afternoon after this news came about, it was like a no-brainer, you know, let's do this fundraiser. And, you know, it was really, I don't know. It was so amazing how many people just basically came out of the woodwork. And I mean, that's one really endearing thing about Memphis is these, local musicians. It's a great sense of community here still, I don't know if you've ever traveled to Memphis, but it's an incredible music place. It just kind of
I've unfortunately not
there's
gone to
something
Memphis.
here. I mean,
have you done a whole bunch of studio sessions? Because being in Memphis, there's always a session going on.
back in the day,
Right.
I used to pop in and play guitar on this and that. I couldn't name any particular stuff. It used to be John Hampton. When he would be producing something and, the rhythm guitar player, whatever, he'd just call me and say, why don't you swing by and lay down a rhythm track, which I would do. And I couldn't tell you half of the bands that I played on, but, so I did a little bit of that, not a ton, but, there's a ton of studios in this city still. And, session musicians do very well in this town. I mean, so, but that was about the extent of my session work there.
Your session work. So
I actually did sometime in the early 2000s. Anthony did a project. I don't know if you ever come across that. It's called Tales from the Rock and Roll Rodeo.
Yeah.
That he put together, and he'd written all these songs. He recorded it really fast. And he had called me out of the blue and said, a couple of these songs I'm missing, some crunchy guitars. And so I hooked up with him and played on those. And of any session work, that was my favorite, if you could call that a session, because we kind of cranked it back up and it felt like the old days, Yeah.
So let me just finish with this then. You start off, you're a teenager, 15, 16, you're playing music for the love of it. Then you do the whole rude awakening to the music business side of it. And now here you are all these years later, and you're sort of doing it for the love of music again. And just, what does that feel like now for you? Just, there's no pressure. There's no AOR guy. There's no middle management. It's just plug and play. I mean, how it's
actually ideal. I mean, it's like coming full circle, because now to ease back into it, and actually, we're kind of reinvigorated now. And now, just like you said, there's no pressure. I mean, it really doesn't matter. I'm actually meeting up with Anthony week after next, and we're going to sit down and write for the first time in who knows how many years. I mean, each of us has been writing music ourselves. I do a lot of stuff. I try to get stuff placed in movies and commercials and all that kind of stuff. So I write a lot of music. But we're actually going to sit down and try to, see what comes out, which I'm really excited about. I'm looking forward to it. That's what we're talking about. If we can get a few songs together, why not record them and just pop them out? I mean,
as Tora Tora,
really
though, right?
Matter.
So potentially new Tora Tora music coming out.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, well, I hope so too. I mean, and I think it would probably be some of the best stuff you've ever done, because when you're not trying to please the radio single market and you can just sort of let creativity take over, that's when the best stuff comes out. I mean, that's really when the best stuff comes out. Yeah. So, is there any sort of timeline on this? Is it sort of like it'll be when it'll be, or do you say, well, we got to get it done by 2017?
No, I mean, I don't think we're gonna, say we have to, make any deadlines for ourselves. But I don't see why we couldn't do it in the near future. And like I said earlier, we're trying to, sort through a lot of offers, and I think we're just, like I said, we're kind of reinvigorated. Patrick got past his health scare stuff. He's kind of got a new focus. And, at this point, just like you said, I mean, it's just for the fun of it. I mean, and it's awesome. We love playing together. So.
Yeah. And we're looking at 30 years now. That's a long
We are
time.
looking at 30 years.
Yeah.
We actually got together for the first time in '87. So,
So there you go.
but it's still awesome, and we love to hook up and play together, and we figure why not? I mean, if there's still a few people that want to come out and see it, then let's do it. I mean, nobody's going to be asking us 20 years from now, so why not? That's why things like that cruise were so cool to us to be a part of that. That there's actually still people, and we had a blast. To get on a boat with people that are just there for that music and to get their fill of it, and it's a really cool thing. We're really fortunate to be a part of that.
Yeah, and they really put that together so well. It's actually very, very much fan based. It's really all about the fan experience, and they sort of give you all the bands.
It is.
And it's great because
it is, and it's what's so cool. I mean, is also so many bands supporting other bands. I mean, and it was just really cool for, I don't know, I would say 98% of the people on there. I mean, we're just hanging with everybody else. You know what I mean? Artist wise, there's, nobody is like, we're rock stars, and everybody was just hanging together. It was a really good time.
And what also I like is the fact that it just gives the fan a chance to see bands that you may not see locally. Like, for example, the Killer Dwarves in Canada. I will see the Killer Dwarves in Ottawa, Toronto, and they come around quite a bit. But if you're from Memphis or from Florida or from, whatever, Mississippi, you might not get a chance. But here you go to this boat and you get everybody. And it's just great.
I know, yeah. And the cool thing about it, I mean, you can walk out of one show right into another, and just, I just had a schedule in my hand the whole time. I saw a ton of, I'm just a fan, I love it. So it was great fun for me, and we really hope to get invited back next time.
Yeah, I hope so too. And of course, the sun and the weather doesn't hurt either. But there you go.
Absolutely.
Keith, great pleasure. It's been one of those things for me. Surprise Attack. I had bought it, wore it out playing it, and before I really got a chance to be this diehard fan, the band just sort of vanished from Canadian airwaves and Canadian perspective, and
cool.
Here you are, and it's just great. It's just absolutely great. So thank you for your time.
Well, man, thank you so much for asking me, and and for doing the interview. And it's just like I said, it's cool that people are still interested. So I'm more than happy to do it. Thank you.
Yeah, and of course, I'll encourage fans to head over to the Tora Tora Facebook page and Twitter and all that stuff. And there you go.
Please do. You can find a link, to that live DVD, which is very cool, and the money goes to a great cause. So check it out.
Yeah, in fact, what I'll do is I have the DVD page opened up in front of me right now, so I will make sure to post that and let people know about it, because it's for a great cause, and cause aside, it's just great music. It's just, as a fan, a great little package to have. So there you go.
Right. Thanks.
Thank you, Keith.
All right. Thank you, Mitch. We'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Bye for now. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care.
And there you have it, folks. My interview with Keith Douglas of the band Tora Tora. You can check them out on Facebook at facebook.com/Tora Tora Band. And, of course, while you're checking stuff out online, please check me out on Twitter at Mitch Lafon. And with that, I bid you a fond farewell, and thank you. Bye for now. Oh, my.